Well, as Taryn mentioned, I do like to take walks with my kids, and I'll let you in on my favorite walk. It's the Salt Creek Trail down in Dana Point. So if you don't know about it, you got to find me after. But if you're not familiar with that trail, you're probably at least familiar with that big green grass hill that leads down to Salt Creek Beach. You know, it's where a lot of people will set up picnics and watch the sunset. The Ritz-Carlton is right there on the left-hand side. Such a good spot. And the top of that hill marks the halfway point for this trail that we walk. And it's kind of just become a tradition throughout the years for us to stop. We have snacks, kids run around, I catch my breath back. And I was just there a couple months ago with my younger two, Tristan and Caleb, and joining us in our break was the Saddleback football team. So there was like 70 or so guys out there doing what I assume was their preseason conditioning, because this was a couple months ago at the tail end of summer. And it was so fun. My 4-year-old thought this was the coolest thing ever. And so he just started copying everything they were doing. They would run up the hill, and he'd run up the hill, and they'd turn around and did back pedals, and he'd turn around and did back pedals, and it was so cute. And I watched him watch them and started thinking, like, what is Tristan going to be like in 13 or 14 years when he's in college? Like, what's he going to do? It's not totally outlandish. Think maybe he'll be a college athlete one day. And so I'm thinking about that, and we're watching, and I noticed that one guy on the team was struggling, like hard, far more than the rest. So much as a mom, I was like, you want to come have a snack with me? Like, come get your breath back. And while I did notice him, I noticed another guy even more who didn't seem to be struggling. But out of the 70 or so guys, he was the only one to go encourage this teammate who was struggling. He would do the drill, and then he would run back down to encourage him to keep going. I mean, we were right there, so he saw it. He would take his hand and put it on the guy's back and say, you got this, buddy. Come on, keep going. You can do it. And I stopped and I thought, man, like, far more than I want Tristan to stand out for his athletic ability or how fast he is, how cute he is, or how smart he is, fill in the blank. I want him to stand out like this guy did for his good character. I want all my kids to stand out far above anything else for their good character. Because think about it, character, like, it's a really big deal. I mean, it is in essence what defines us as people. You ask someone, what type of character do they have? And that kind of tells you all you need to know about them. I love how one author defines it, Kathy Cook. She says, character is the inner stuff that he or she is made of. It's the inner reality in which thoughts, speech, decisions, behavior, and relationships are rooted. That's a big deal. And so I think when we think about our roles as moms, we need to recognize that what we do today or what we don't do today to instill good character into our kids is going to directly impact the type of person they become. And we know that the type of person they become is going to directly impact their future, right? Because our character bleeds into every aspect of our lives. Your character bleeds into how you are as a mom or a wife, a friend, a teammate, a classmate, an employee. Fill in the blank. It is a part of every role in our life, and so it's going to impact every part of it. And so I'm super excited for us to talk about it this morning and the importance of it. And I love that this topic piggybacks off Ashley's from last week about our high calling of motherhood. Because when it comes to molding our little children's character, it can feel sometimes like a daunting task. But God, who is the creator of us and of them, he saw fit for you to be the mom of your child or your children. He said, Chelsea Allen, and all your strengths and all your weaknesses and the influences of your upbringing and your personality, I want you to be the mom of Bryce, Blake, Tristan, and Caleb. And it's the same thing for you. So in light of that, as we think about how we can instill good character into our kids, arguably the most important, foundational, and impressionable thing we can do is to be their best example of it. And so write it down that way for your first point is be a good example. I assume every mom's desire is to be a good example to their kid, but especially here in this room of women who are coming to a place called Navigating Motherhood, we are all fervently trying to be better examples to our kids. But as a fellow mom to littles, we also know it's not always that easy, is it? The days can offer us a lot of opportunities to be a poor example to our kids. Little Billy pees in his pants right when you're trying to leave the house. Or, your kid finally figures out how to climb out of their crib and you're having to be tested with how you're going to respond. or they spill the Cheerios, or they break your vase, or they fill in the blank. The days offer us a lot of opportunities to respond by being a poor example. Or maybe it's not even just the everyday challenges of being a mom, but there's other challenges in your life that can be a stress for you, that are making it hard for you to be a good example. Maybe you're facing some marital challenges or financial uncertainties, or maybe you're having some health issues, or someone you know and that you love is facing some health issues. I think it's fair to say that life and motherhood give us no shortage of opportunities to be a bad example to our kids. But that's just what I want us to realize, is that these are opportunities. These are opportunities day in and day out, right? The really hard, the super simple, just the everyday struggles that come with life are opportunities for us to be a good example to our kids, to show them what it looks like to have good character in moments when it's really hard to. This is an opportunity, and really, when you think about it, it's those harder moments when we have the most captive audience, don't we? And it's really when our true character shines the most. And so I want us to embrace those everyday hard moments or the really hard seasons and see it as an opportunity to be a good example to our kids. I mean, even if, another kid shoves your kid at the park and the mom feels sorry, you have a choice to make in front of your kids. Are you going to show compassion and grace and understanding? Or are you going to be angry and judgmental towards that mom and that child? We always have these opportunities throughout the day to be a good example to our kids, even when it's hard. But, that's a big but. I'm not talking about yours. We are gonna fall short. We're gonna fall short. We're gonna mess up. There are inevitably gonna be times when we don't do this perfectly, and we are a good example. But even in those moments when we fall short, we can still go to our children and show them what it looks like to have humility. Even if it was just this morning and you made a snarky remark to your husband on the way out, or you lost your temper with your child, we can go to our children and say, I am so sorry for raising my voice at you. Mommy should not have done that. Will you please forgive me? Don't we want to exemplify to them what it looks like to show, ask for their forgiveness and show just ownership over what it is that we did wrong? That is such a good example, even in those moments that we fall short. And I do think it is good. It is good for us to remember that we're not going to do this perfectly. We're not going to do it perfectly because we're not perfect. But there is so much comfort in knowing that we have an example in someone who is, and that's God. He's perfect. He is holy. Holy means perfect. He literally is incapable of doing anything wrong because that is his character. He can do no wrong in his word, in his actions, in his deed. Isn't that wild? And while we're not perfect and we're not going to be perfect, God does call us to work on our character to be more like his. It says in 1 Peter 1, 15 through 16, but as he who has called you to be holy, as he who called you is holy, you also be holy in all your conduct. Since it is written, you shall be holy, for I am holy. And so we need to fight against all of the things around us, all of the influences, the whining, whatever it might be, anything that's influencing around us to fall short. We need to be more motivated by who is above us. We need to think in that moment, how can I handle this situation in a way that honors and glorifies God? What would God do? How would he want me to act in this moment? Just last week, on Friday, actually, as we were getting ready to come here to NAVMA, which you guys know those mornings, they're busy, we're getting ready and our electricity goes off. And I'm like, awesome. And so my husband wasn't home to help me figure it out, but I go outside to switch the breaker, and that didn't work. And I was like, bummer, okay. And then I get an alert on my phone that says the electricity will be out until at least 10:30 in Laguna Niguel. And I was like, so maybe some of you experience this too. And I was like, okay, well, here we go. And so I proceeded to do my makeup in the dark, and I decided to wear a shirt that I was planning on ironing because I couldn't use the iron. And then I went into the kitchen to start making my kids breakfast thinking, okay, we'll just get to church early, we'll do the best with what we can. But I couldn't make any eggs because the stove wasn't gonna work, and I couldn't use the microwave to make oatmeal because that wasn't gonna work. And so I'm just thinking okay, there are a lot of temptations to be really stressed and to be a poor example, but no, what would God want me to do? And so I took Susan's advice, and I was like, I'm gonna be a fun mom, and we're gonna go to Chick-fil-A. And so we live right down the street from Chick-fil-A, which is really dangerous. Well, guess what? Chick-fil-A is in Laguna Niguel too. So Chick-fil-A was closed. But luckily, there is a Chick-fil-A 5 miles from my house. And so we went to that Chick-fil-A. There were so many opportunities that morning for me to raise my voice, to lose my temper, to get really stressed. But you know what? Keeping my eyes focused on the Lord and seeing this as an opportunity to show my children how I can respond to a hard circumstance, I knew was going to benefit them. So much so that in that moment, we actually had a really good conversation about, we were out without electricity this morning, but there are people who have been without electricity for a lot longer than that. And there are some people in other parts of the world who don't have electricity. And you know what? I really think we take for granted our stove and our oven and the iron and all these things that we use every day, the lights. And so we stopped and we prayed and we asked God to forgive us for those days and those mornings that we are entitled to all these things. And we also had more compassion on other people who have been without electricity and grocery stores and Chick-fil-A's for a lot longer than we have. So I just really want us to be encouraged to redeem those opportunities to teach our children good, valuable lessons. Because that's what we want from them, right? We want them to learn how to respond to adversity or conflict well. And so we need to exemplify that to them. Because that's really when our true character comes out, as I mentioned before. We want our child to be in a hard situation and think, how can I still respond well to this? How can I show good character even in a time where it's really easy not to? And so I want us to do a little exercise, so get your phalanges ready to write. Hopefully they already are, but I want you to draw an arrow up, and then I want you to write, what do I need to show my child or my children, if you have multiple kids, what do I need to show them more of? And then I want you to draw another arrow up and write, what do I need to show my child or my children less of? And that arrow is to remind us that we need to be focused on our behavior because of what God says about our character. So the arrow is to remind us we want to, focus on our character because of God, but what is something that stands out to you that you want to be a better example of to your kids? What do you want to show them more of? What do you want to show them less of or know more of? What do you know you need to work on cutting out that they see from you frequently? So I want to give you a minute. And if you're not writing anything because you're too embarrassed for the person next to you to see it, maybe you need to write down humility. I'm just kidding, kind of. But we're going to discuss it afterwards in your small groups. I want you guys to be vulnerable and honest. We can all relate to one another with the struggles that can come in motherhood. But hold each other accountable. Come up with practical ideas of how you can combat this struggle. Maybe there's specific memory verses that your leaders can have you memorize. Share with one another. This is the gift of being a part of a community like this that all cares about each other doing better as moms. And this is a super shameless plug, but I could not help but think about our upcoming women's retreat in January on the topic of character. So they've been going through the fruit of the Spirit, and this year it's on faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. It's at the end of January, January 31st. It's in Carlsbad. Make it a girls' weekend. Talk amongst your group. Go with some friends. I bet if you told your husband, hey, I'm going to go learn how to be more gentle, faithful, and self-controlled, they might sign you up. So really consider going. I'm sorry, I've been to the last two that were on the other fruits of the Spirit, and it will help transform your character to be more like God's. So I really strongly considering you going. Because there are so many things that we are all working on all the time, whether it be tidy your homes or just perfecting that homemade bread, whatever it is. But we are never, ever going to regret the time that we invest into our character, ever. Speaking of time, think about the amount of time that we spend on certain things training our kids, like potty training, for instance. You research it, you ask your friends to be praying for you that week, like you wipe the schedule clean, no pun intended. You do all these things to prepare for training your kid when you're getting ready for them to be potty trained, right? And we know that the consistency in which we do it is really gonna drive how much success we see and how successful they are in potty training. And so I want us to ask ourselves, like day in and day out, how proactive are we to train our child's character? Like, what are we doing to prepare for it, to plan for it, to make it a priority in our day-to-day schedules, to make sure that we are training our kids? So we need to make sure that we are as consistent and fervent in training our child's character than we are with anything else. So write it down that way for point number 2 is consistently train your kids. Consistently train your kids. And when I say train, I know some of you might think like, but I want them just to be grateful. Like, I don't want to have to tell them to be grateful. And I get that. I'm with you. I want my child to grow to have a genuinely grateful heart, right? God cares more about our hearts than our actions. Even the Bible says, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So we want our children to grow to be genuinely generous people, to be others focused. But what will happen if we don't train them in those things? Like, what if we just leave it to them, to naturally progress into being more grateful kids? If we're like, yeah, little Billy, he's 2, he's selfish, duh, but he won't always be, or they don't like to share now, but I bet they will when they're older. Do you guys know any like ungrateful adults? Have you ever met like an entitled or disrespectful teenager? There's a lot of heads shaking, yeah. And so this isn't just something that's going to magically happen. We need to be consistently directing and training and correcting our children as they learn to have and establish good character. Just like they're not going to learn the ABCs without us teaching the ABCs, they're not going to learn to be respectful if we don't show them and teach them how to be respectful. And we got to remember, we need to be the ones to train them, because if we don't, then they're just going to be trained by whatever other influences are around them. And so I thought long and hard during my prep about what we as moms to littles just need to be doing more of day in and day out. Remember, I have a 9, 7, 4, and 1-year-old, so I'm in this with you. We got to put our mama boots on in the morning and say, how can I train my children? What can I do? And I really think in these early years, when their character is really being shaped, we need to help our children establish good habits. And that's the first subpoint, is we want to help them establish good habits and avoid establishing bad ones, right? Because think about it. It is so much harder for our kids to become grateful when they've been allowed, an attitude of entitlement for the first 5 years of their life. Or, it's hard for them to learn to be hard workers when we've just let them be lazy. It's hard for them to learn to be respectful when they've just gotten away with being disrespectful to people. I mean, think about the habits that you established growing up, good or bad. I'm sure there's some habits that were instilled in you that you're still trying to fight today. Those are really hard to break. But then you have good habits that have just really become a part of your mold and your character. I can think of 2 that my parents really ingrained in me, many more, but I'll stick with the 2. I'm just kidding. My parents were adamant that I respected people. They were so big on respect. And I was an athlete growing up, and so I played for a lot of different teams, which means I had a lot of different coaches. There was referees, umpires, just so many opportunities for me to disagree with decisions or calls, whatever. But my dad would reinforce and reiterate, you need to respect. You need to respect your authority. You need to respect the people around you. And I really think that's become a part of my mold today, and I'm grateful for that. Or, being on time. My dad's saying was, being on time is being 15 minutes early. And I will admit that that's a lot harder with 4 kids and a busy schedule, but I am most prone to being anxious when I'm running late somewhere because it's just been ingrained in me that I need to be early. And if I'm too early, then I sit in my car and I wait till I am on time. What started as a habit has been kind of molded into my character. And so I want you to put on your ponchos or grab your nursing covers, because I'm about to hose you down with a whole bunch of different ideas of what we can do every day to help our kid establish good habits. The first one, teach them to make eye contact. Teach your children to make eye contact at a young age. It's going to be really hard. You're going to need to be consistently training it and reminding it. It's more comfortable for some kids than others. But when we instill that habit of eye contact, it's showing people respect. My kids know that when I remind them to look at someone in the eye, it's because we respect them and we love God and we want to love people well. Teach your kids to look at people in the eyes. And moms, they can't do that if their head is in a phone or a tablet. So if you go to the grocery store or a restaurant and the waitress comes by, they need to look at them. and say please or thank you when the water is brought. Teach them to make good eye contact. Especially those of you with sons, but even for girls, teach them to hold the door open. Chivalry is not lost. Teach them to hold the door open. And if they're really little and the door is heavy, help them open the door and say, hey, we're going to open the door for this person. Teach them how to respect people by making other people the focus by these small little habits. Don't you want your little 3-year-old to grow up knowing nothing other than to hold the door open for a lady who's coming? Those are habits that need to be instilled into them now. Another good habit that allows them to show people respect, don't let them interrupt. Some of you have probably do this or have heard of this, but if I'm talking to someone or someone's talking to me, my kids are expected to come put their hand on my lap or on my arm, and then I put my hand on their palm so they know that I know they're there, and as soon as I can, I will attend to them. But mommy hears you, and if it's an emergency, if they're sitting there dancing like they're gonna pee in their pants, we have to explain to them. You can say, I'm so sorry for interrupting, but I need to go to the bathroom. Right? So let's just teach our children these habits of how we can be respectful people. Because when we're showing our kids these habits of respect, we're not just teaching them how to be respectful. Respectful people are often more considerate. They're more others-focused. They're more compassionate. They're more kind. There are a lot of other things. So these are great practical ways to mold their character. Another one, say thank you. Teach your kid to say thank you. I know you're all like, well, duh, that's profound. Of course I'm going to teach my kids to say thank you, but really, all the time. And these aren't just manners, because that might be what you're thinking, well, that's just good manners. But I love this quote by author Emily Post. She says, manners are a sensitive awareness of the feelings of others. If you have that awareness, you have good manners, no matter what fork you use. And I love that because it reminds us that when we say thank you, when we have good manners, it's the self-awareness of the other person. When we say thank you, it's acknowledging that someone did something for us or that someone gave us something. And so just saying thank you is more than just good manners. It can really be a reflection of their character, of their gratitude, of their respect and appreciation. So have them say thank you. Have them say thank you when someone opens the door for them. This is admittedly a pet peeve of mine because if I open the door for someone, they walk by, I'm like, it wasn't opening by itself, But maybe that just hasn't become a habit of theirs. So teach your kids to say thank you to the person who opens the door for them, to look at them in the eyes and say, thank you, I appreciate that. Teach them to say thank you to their KBC teacher. And if they're not talking yet, get in the routine of teaching them, say thank you. This is thank you in sign language because you want it to become a habit. You want them to just know to do it. And it's not just about the action. We want them to establish oh yes, they sacrificed their time and sanity to watch me today. I'm going to thank them for it. Teach them to thank their coach. If they're on sports teams, they sacrifice time to serve and to volunteer. Have them go up to their coach at the end of practice and say thank you. In our house, they need to thank the chef. Whoever made the meal didn't make itself, the food didn't just land on the table. Have them thank the person who made the meal. Our kids, we live in such a place where they're always provided food, but don't allow them to be entitled to it. Remind them that that is a gift. Help them to be appreciative of it. Another thing, write cards. And you're like, my kid, all it does is nurse. It doesn't write cards yet. And I get that, but if you get in the habit of writing cards, and once your kid gets a little older, they can trace what you write, or they can just color on the card that you wrote. But you want them to remember to be grateful for what they're given by things like saying thank you, writing notes. And my daughter's birthday was just a couple weeks ago, and God was so kind for her to get a lot of gifts. And it was like, I got to write so many thank you cards because I got so many gifts. And I was like, well, yeah, if you got too many gifts to write too many thank you cards, maybe you got too many gifts. We can give them back, So just remind them, people spent time and money to give you things. Let's show them that we're grateful for it. A couple other things, give them chores. So many websites that will give you age-appropriate chores. This is going to help teach them how to work hard. It sounds basic, but do it. Train them every day how they can work hard, how they can do things like dress themselves. And as moms, sometimes this can be really hard for us because it's just easier for us to do it for them. But we want to instill in that habit that character of work ethic, that hard work by letting them do the hard things. And with that in mind, don't throw tomatoes at me, but don't always remove the struggle from your kids because hard things happen in life all the time. And if we try to look for every opportunity to remove a struggle, then we're not really setting them up for the reality of what's to come in the future. Even in Romans 5:4, it says that endurance produces character. So we want them to learn how to endure through hard things. And I'm not saying if your kid's foot is stuck in the trampoline, like just let him fend for himself. But like think about what might be really hard for your kid right now and how you can step back a little bit and let them try to endure through that and figure it out. Let them know they can do hard things by allowing them to do hard things. The next step point in ways we can consistently train our kids' character is to leverage teaching opportunities. So when our kids are watching TV shows or movies, we want to highlight certain, opportunities to say like, wow, that was really kind of Mickey or, I don't know, Bluey, like look at how that made them feel. That was a kind thing that they did. Or if it wasn't kind, point that out. Wow, that was a really disrespectful way to talk to the mom, right? We shouldn't talk like that. How could she have spoken differently? And I will say, whatever shows your children watch, it shouldn't be based on characters who are constantly showing disrespect to other people. So be mindful of that. That's what they're taking in. That's what they're being influenced by. Friendships, we want to teach them to have good discernment with friendships because that can often influence their character as well. Another one, the last sub point, is to read books. So I brought a couple, but there are so many good books out there on character. These are all in the bookstore, by the way, but there is God's Wisdom for Little Girls that has just a whole bunch of different proverbs and different characteristics that give scripture and poems to them. There's another one for boys here, God's Wisdom for Little Boys. So those are really great to go through and then talk about. And then A Little Boy After God's Own Heart is another really cute one. Again, it gives scripture and just specific, like I had one I wanted to read for you guys. Kindness is a quality God wants in you, to be nice to others your whole day through. Who is in need of your visit today? Who can comfort along life's way? And it goes on. But you can read that and then say, okay, what can we do today to come alongside someone and show them comfort? Like who's hurting today that we can go bless? So read these books and then use that as a way to apply it in their life. And then the last one is this awesome book. It's the Character Builder Bibles book, also in the bookstore. But each one has a story in the Bible on character, which of course is our best resource for character is the Bible. But it's a story in the Bible of good character or, obedience, what it looked like in the Bible when someone needed to show good obedience, a little poem, a little rhyme, and then in my everyday life, what that can look like for your kids. How can they show obedience today? So pick one of these up or all of them up and implement that as a means of consistently training your kids in how to have good character. And so I probably just drenched your ponchos and your nursing covers with a lot of ideas, but hopefully you see that there are endless opportunities for us to pour into our kids' character every day by establishing those good habits, by making a really big deal about it. Make a big deal about it because our kids are being raised in a world where people make a big deal about a lot of things, right? And character isn't necessarily amongst the top, if you think about it. I mean, success, athletic ability, good looks, body image, how organized your home is. Like, all of those things are made a really big deal. And it's not that those are bad, but let's be extra diligent to be moms who celebrate and make a really big deal out of character. And so that's our last point, is celebrate good character. We want to celebrate good character and communicate to our children that this is what matters most. This is what matters most. The Bible tells us in Proverbs 13:4, the soul of the sluggard craves and gets nothing, while the soul of the diligent is richly supplied. Philippians 2:3 says, do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourself. And Proverbs 10:9 says, whoever walks in integrity walks securely. And so we know that character is a big deal because God talks about it all throughout the Bible. And so we want to communicate that same message to our children and how we're celebrating it every day. And so what are some ways we can make sure that we're doing this? One thing that we can do is, as moms to littles, we want to encourage them a lot. Like, good job, buddy. I'm so proud of you for doing that, which is good. We want to encourage them because it motivates them to do it more. But I want to make sure that when we celebrate our kids, when we encourage them, that we are focusing on their character. And that sounds like, yeah, no, obviously. But God cares about the heart more than the action. And so, for example, if your child plays soccer and she's been practicing really hard, outside of the games, and then game time comes and she scores a goal, like, you're going to be pumped about that goal. But you want to highlight not necessarily the goal so much as like, you worked so hard. I'm so proud of you. Look, it paid off. I'm proud of you. But you want to celebrate the character, the heart, the motive, the hard work that she put in. Because your daughter could work really hard off the field and go and make no goals, right? But you're still going to celebrate her hard work. Or maybe she goes out there and she shows compassion to a little girl who hurt her leg, but she scored no goals. She stunk out there, really. But you're like, I'm so proud of you. You were the only one to show compassion on that little girl who got hurt. Like, we want to emphasize to our kids that that is what matters most. Those are the things that matter most. We want to point out and celebrate things that are in our child's control, like their attitude, their compassion, their respect, their obedience, their kindness. Another way I think we can do this is just, to kind of alter the way we communicate is be specific in your praises. So, for instance, instead of saying, good job making your bed, you can say something like, thank you so much for being responsible and doing your chores. Because we all love a made bed, and we're stoked about that, and we can encourage them, but we can say, I'm really most excited about the fact that you were responsible and you did your chores, or good job opening the door for that lady, which hopefully they'll start doing. Rather than saying it that way, say, I am so proud of you for putting others before yourself and showing that lady so much respect and kindness by opening the door for them. You see how there's that little adjustment that explains more of, you're highlighting the motive than the outcome. You're highlighting the why over the what. So I think that small adjustment will help. And hopefully it goes without saying, because we're talking a lot about celebrating good character, but if we're going to celebrate good character, we've got to make sure that we are disciplining them for the poor behavior, for the poor character, right? They have to be able to distinguish that these things are really good, and I can see that, and these things are not. And I can feel that, and I can see that too. So you need to implement certain ways to correct your children when they are showing poor behavior. Because as we discussed before, if it goes unnoticed or if it doesn't go addressed, that can manifest into much greater things down the line. And then the last suggestion would be to implement a chart or some type of encouragement system. There's so many charts out there that you can look up, and maybe you already have some that you use for potty training or chores or whatever it is. But maybe use this as character specifically. Maybe your child is struggling with patience right now or self-control. Highlight that and make a chart about it, and notice it when they do things of self-control. Highlight it. We use a penny system in our house where there's a jar of pennies, and then each kid has their own jar, and they get pennies for showing good character and other things too, but we really utilize it for showing good character. And I will say, they're not allowed to say, hey, did you see me do that? I need a penny. Like, they're not allowed to ask. They ask no pennies, because that's not why we do it. We want them to be prone to do it because we know it's what God wants us to do, not because we get the penny. But the pennies encourage them. And I remind them that even if mommy doesn't see you do something good, or I see you do something bad, God sees it, and he'll address it accordingly. So I always remind them of that. But then we have this redemption chart where the kids can take their penny and say 5 pennies for a piece of candy. And there's a long list of things that they basically can pay me for, 20 pennies for game night with mom and dad. And so it's really been effective to motivate our kids and for us to celebrate them practically throughout the day. And so hopefully those are just some helpful ideas that you might be able to implement into your home to just celebrate character more, make it a bigger deal in their minds. And well, as Taryn mentioned, I used to be in NAVMO, and not only did I meet some of my best friends 9 years ago who are still my best friends today, which is awesome, but even 9 years ago, I still distinctly remember specific things and topics that were taught about that really impacted me as a mom. A new mom, my oldest was a baby. He's in 4th grade now, like whatever. And I remember implementing those things and being diligent to do them, and I will say, I've seen fruit from it. I have seen the way God has used that to help positively impact my household, my parenting. I'm not saying I'm doing it perfect, but those things have really helped me as a mom. And that is my deepest hope and prayer for this, is that 9 years from now, or however many years, we can look back and say the same thing about this topic. We can say that because of our intentionality to instill good character into our kids, that we see evidence of it in our kids. From our discipline to make it a priority, to consistently train them, to be a good example in celebrating it, that we can see that fruit of it in their character and be really excited about how God is going to use them in the future. Thank you, ladies.